right, hi everybody. Thank you so much for being with us on this Monday morning or Monday, whatever time it is where you're at. We're very excited to go over our SIMS3 platform with you. And we appreciate your patience. We appreciate your enthusiasm to get access to this platform. And so let's just jump right in this. With us, or with me over here, I have Kyle. My name is Matt. We're both team members at Scentroid. And we have a couple of people from behind the scenes who are going to be helping with us today. We have Emily, who's just off camera over here. And we also have Dee and Iris. What Dee and Iris are going to be doing, they're both programmers. They're going to be active in our chat. So keep in mind, we do have a lot of content to go over. So we're going to have kind of two things happening at once. We're going to be discussing the tutorial segments on screen and going over the different elements of SIMS3. But at the same time, Iris and Dee will be in our chat, helping you out with some of those more technical questions you might encounter. If you require some visual assistance, we can definitely take some quick breaks to show you on screen. But keep in mind, we're going to try to move as quickly as possible. As I said, we do have quite a bit to go over. So on that note, I'm going to hand it off to Kyle, who's going to be going over our first portion of SIMS3. So guys, keep any of your questions, comments, concerns, keep it in chat. And yeah, let's go.
All right, sounds good. So let's see when this loads. All right, there you go. So I'm going to start us off with the login page. As some of you may have already seen, this is our SIMS3 login page. I just wanted to start here because the main thing is that if you already had a SIMS2 or 1 account, you already have access to SIMS3. You just need to use this forgot password button. If your email for whatever isn't an actual email and it was just something made or just something used before, just contact us at Scentroid support and we can get you guys all set up and ready to use the platform. So here we're just going to log into this account we already have set up. Go here and we are in. So this is SIMS3. And I'm just going to quickly just go over some of the stuff that's on the home page right away. So on the left-hand side, this is our navigation menu. Here you'll see your options. You can go home, analysis, notifications. We have weather settings, and of course, log out. Someone needs to be admitted there, sir. Let's just handle that. On the top right, this is our time box and sort of settings and stuff you can do on the home page. So here it shows your current time with the time zone. The E lets you create a new event. These events are just events you can define, which we'll talk about later on in the settings. You'll have things like odor is by default, and then there's some other custom made ones you can add. There's a search box here where you can search for things within your company. And this is our timeline navigation panel, which would show weather information and our timeline information as well. The weather information will show once you actually select on a facility, which Matthew will start from there.
All right, so let me just share my screen in 1 second. All right, so we're looking at our main map view now. So the cool thing about our map view is that we can actually store multiple facilities within a single view. So let's take a look at one of our facilities and then we can investigate some of those sub-elements that we're looking for. So I'm going to click on this facility up here. This is our Stouffville facility. And as you can see, the map has opened up to a couple of really cool looking elements. So we've got our plume that's expanding into the north over here. And we have a couple of map icons as well. So let's go over briefly before we really get into our Sims presentation as to what these map icons are and what they mean. So this little guy over here, this is our source icon, our source emission. So this is where our sources, our point sources, circular sources, rectangular sources, this is their point of origin. So you'll always see a plume expanding beyond one of these points. If we look down over here, this is our event group. If we click on our event group, it opens it up into, just give it a second to load. Yep, there we go. I'm sorry. Into our odor events, which are visually mapped on the screen. We're going to go into a lot more event details, but I'm just touching on what these map icons are. So these appear in 3 different colors. One is our green over here. This means that the odor event is not justified, implying that that event falls outside of an odor plume or an odor source. We have to be justified, implying that the system will be justifying this at some point. Or you may have entered manual justification, so it's waiting for you to determine its justification. And we also have, I don't see one on the screen immediately, But we also have red plumes, or red odor events, which means that it is justified and it falls within a plume, or it fell within a plume during the time of justification. So moving on, we have this little group over here. These are AQ safes. So this is referring to our indoor air quality, or indoor air quality monitors. So when you see this icon and you click on it, you won't see smaller devices appearing on screen, generally because our AQ safe units or indoor monitoring is associated with a singular location. It's not necessarily GPS based where you might have one far away. They're all going to be recorded within a single facility. Here we hit this group icon. These are our outdoor monitoring devices or continuous monitoring analyzers. So you can see a couple of map nodes have appeared over here. So if we were to click on one of them, just very briefly, this left panel over here, this is our information panel. This slides out whenever we click on any sort of map element. So we can navigate into our devices, we can navigate into our groups using either this left panel or by visually clicking on the map. Just for example purposes, I'm going to continue on the map and click on one of these devices. So as you can see, the left panel is opened up to give me a broad overview of the device, some information on the device, and also an active sensor look. So we can see all of our sensors here that have been installed into the device itself. And what we're getting is a snapshot at the last reported time over here. We're going to show you a really cool feature on how we can peek through time and change this. But until we get to that point, we'll just continue this, our map overview. So over here, this group over here, this is our sensitive receptor group. This stores all of our sensitive receptor information. And as you may be aware, sensitive receptors are something that we might want to track. Maybe it could be a schoolyard, it could be a hospital, for instance, something that stays at one GPS location that may require us to monitor to ensure that there's no major odor events, or perhaps we might even have an emission source that collapses on top of it that we need to warn them about or keep an eye on for it. Sorry, I see someone asking for permission to record. We will have the device recorded. We will have this presentation recorded and I'll upload it onto YouTube and I'll send it off to you, of course. I can also send you the raw video format as well. So you could record if you want, but it's not necessary. I will be giving you the recording. All right, sorry about that. So sensitive receptors, we have them mapped over here. You can see the little icon. So if we click on that, you can see some sensitive receptor information. And they're currently not being affected by an emission source. We have one that falls within. Let's see what's going on here. There we go. So typically, you can see how they are being affected by this local chimney source that we have nearby. And that pretty much concludes the map overview. Before I hand it back to Kyle, I just want to show you guys something, just kind of like a typical project that you could potentially be working on. Okay, so this is kind of our cheat sheet on how we could potentially approach SIMS3 along with any type of odor monitoring or an odor monitoring project. So first, our main goal is to collect our complaints. You log the complaints into SIMS3, and then we could use SIMS3 to automatically capture using one of our external APIs. So the main thing that we want to do here is we're looking at our map, we're looking at potential sources that could be affecting areas of concern on our map, and we're logging any type of complaints to determine whether or not they could potentially be justified. Secondly, we want to investigate these complaints. This is our step 2 process. So this might involve a little bit of field work if any of you guys have done some type of field work with your project. So we're looking around at these complaints. We're using our devices to analyze what's happening in the air around it. And what we're trying to do is look for any potential sensitive receptors. So this could be perhaps a person that we want to record, or a person that we need to get some more information from that we know will be steadily feeding us information that we can utilize in SIMS3. And of course, we want to add those sensitive receptors into SIMS3. So the next thing that we want to do, our next step, is we want to triangulate our potential emission sources. So we can do that by starting to take a look at some of our complaints. If we have multiple complaints registered into a single area, then that is a good area for us to investigate. Using SIMS3 even, this is some of the technology that we're currently working on that will be released very shortly. auto triangulation of those sources to determine and see what's happening in those areas that get higher complaints. And we can investigate these potential emission sources with using some devices, let's say our urban scanner system, or if we want to put one of our continuous monitors or CT or Sentinel devices, just to determine, see what's happening in those sources. And we can determine some calculations where we can do direct monitoring of those sources and try to capture some of the data that's leaving them. So our step 4 is to take a look at the device data. This is kind of a little bit more of an analysis phase where we take all the information that we have collected in SIMS3. And with that, we can enter all the source information into SIMS3. We can develop plumes, and we can take a look at monitoring these new sources and assess any type of order event justification we may need. And finally, we want to monitor new complaints at this point, and we want to determine any type of order justification for those new complaints. And of course, with this new justification data, we triangulate new emission sources. These are things that we may have perhaps missed in our original monitoring. So I can send you guys this image. It's just a bit of a cheat sheet to let you know how a typical project may look like. Obviously, every project might be a little bit different, and we can always help you to determine what are going to be your key points, your key values to assess during these potential projects. So I'm going to hand it back to Kyle.
Sounds good. Stop sharing.
Sorry.
You're good, you're good. Red button. Down a little bit. Next to the green is a stop share.
Sorry, guys. Some Mac technical issues.
Sure. No problem. All good. Luke, I see you have a couple questions. Just to answer your first one there, we're going to go over adding a bunch of stuff onto SIMS3 here. So hopefully that helps out with some of the process. As for the second question, we'll see if we can get Dee or Iris to follow up on you with that one quickly as we just continue to move on with the presentation. So what I'm going to be doing is showing you guys how to add an emission source. So as we saw with Matthew explaining the steps, one of the things that came up was creating this emission source that can monitor an area and sort of create what we call a plume. So we have 3 types of emission sources currently. Here on this map, we have 2 available, or 2 shown. So the small one here, for example, is a circular one. We just called it pond. You'll see here, there's an emission rate, some information, as well as the plume itself. If we zoom in, we can see it's kind of a circular shape. It's sort of affected by this. Another type we have is a point source. Point sources are typically chimney stacks or just small areas where the emissions can come out of one sort of small individual source, usually higher above on the ground. So here you'll see we have the settings for this, like the height of the stack, we have the diameter, we have the exit temperature, velocity, things like that. Each emission source may have different settings required. In this case, we're going to create the third option that we have, which is a rectangular. And I'm going to choose this little area here just because it's kind of a rectangle. So it would fit nice. So we're going to click this add new emission source. We're going to name it. We're just going to call this wastewater, for example. The second option here is facility. So this is the facility that you want this emission source to be tied to. In this case, we're in the Scentroid office area. So we're going to select that. Source type, this is what I talked about just before. We have this circular, rectangular, and point. We're going to go with the rectangular again. So there's also an option for monitoring. What monitoring option does is part of our source estimation is what we call it. Basically, over time, the sensors you select, which will be the next step, we can use the data from those in order to better determine the emission rate that is coming out of the emission source itself. So there's 2 types for the monitoring. If you do rectangular circle, you're forced to just use indirect monitoring, which is basically just equipment in the general area of it that we can use the sensors. If you do a point source, you have the option of indirect or direct. Direct meaning you have an equipment directly into the stack itself. In this case, because it's a point source, we can call it a stack. Let's say you have like an AQ safe somewhere within the actual chimney that's able to directly measure the gas that's coming out of it. In this case, because we're doing rectangular, we're going to do indirect. Part of the indirect, we have to select some sensors. So here, ideally, what you would want to do is select sensors that are going to be in the area around your emission source. This will better help determine the updated rate. In this case, I'm just going to select a couple sensors we have. We're going to go, we'll just take a couple H2Ss. So because this is, oh, sorry, I can answer that right now. So indirect monitoring will take the sensors that are within the area of the emission source and use those sensor readings to help better calculate the emission rate. So that way your emission rate is more accurate given the conditions, given your sensor readings, and it's constantly being updated. So in this case, with the indirect, it allows us to select multiple different sensors. So if you want the best reading, multiple sensors are good, located around different areas around the emission source. So we'll just select a couple H2Ss. You can only select one sensor type per emission source. So in this case, our emission source at this point would be classified as a H2S plume. The next one is location density. So we can just set this to urban. Emission rate. So this is your initial emission rate. This can be used, you'd have to calculate this beforehand. And then basically whatever value you calculate, you would plug into here as your initial emission rate. In this case, we'll just put a number like 34 grams per second, and we'll say this source is active. The last part is going to be actually drawing the emission source. So if you'll see on the map, Zoom might cut it off a bit. But in this case, on the left-hand side, there's this little draw and map icon. Both the circular and the rectangle have this option. In this case, we can go ahead and we can draw it. The little question mark will basically tell you that it needs to be in a clockwise pattern when you draw it. So we will go ahead and draw a little box around pond thing. Hit select. An algorithm will quickly just make this into a perfect rectangle. And we'll scroll down and we'll hit create. And you'll get this pop up here. So this just means a new emission source is added. The main thing here is that all of our plumes are calculated every 10 minutes. So the 10-minute mark, so 9:20, 9:30, 9:40, so on throughout the whole day. So you may not see a plume right away, and you might just have to wait for that 10-minute mark for your first plume to appear. It's just part of our background calculations that help us to produce more plumes for everybody and create very accurate plumes as well. So you'll see that our emission rate, our source is added, and that's pretty much the gist of it. One other thing I'll quickly show you, Matthew's going to talk about events in a second, and he'll go into more detail about it. But because emission sources can also contribute to events, namely odor events, you'll see when you open up emission sources on some of them that have correlated events, there's a little event notification box here. These are all events that are correlated to this emission source, meaning most likely the event took place while it was inside that plume from the emission source. So you'll see here, there's also correlated events and all the options. Matthew will go into more detail about events right now. I just wanted to show this as well. So I'll hand it off to Matthew to talk about events.
Great. So let me just share 1 second. All right, so one of the really cool things about SIMS3 is our events, our events tracking. A neat thing that we can do within SIMS3 is we can take a look at different types of events, and in all honesty, the sky's the limit as to what we can approach here. So for instance, if my office, for instance, has a tendency to get headaches around a specific time, I can use that as an event type. I can create an event type for headaches and state that headaches occur from 12 to 4, for instance. And I can take a look at these events and I can create correlations between the event times and perhaps take a look at chemical analysis during that time to see what's happening within this event and what is occurring as well. So what we can do with these events, I'm going to show you right now how to create an odor event, and we can take a look at how to create some of those other types of events shortly afterwards. So I'm just going to right click on our screen and I'm going to add in an odor event. So let's say I received a complaint from John. He lives in this house right here, and I'm going to enter the facility, our main facility, Scentroid office. This is a facility that I would like to connect this odor event to. And I have 3 different types of users that I can add in. I can add in an external user, which means that it's this gentleman who ended up contacting us to let us know that he received or there was an event, or he perhaps contacted the city and the city contacted you to let you know that there was an odor event received here. User itself, so this could be an odor event that I want to add into the event myself, and I want to tag it to my name, or one of our sensitive receptors, or the sensitive receptors that we discussed earlier. They can be contributing to these events, and we can tag these events to sensitive receptor locations. So for this circumstance, I'm going to use an external user. Their user name is going to be, or their name is going to be John Smith. So Mr. John Smith, thank you for reporting the event. The event time is automatically taken within the 4 hours of you entering it. So it'll be within a 4-hour window at the current present time, but I can actually backdate these events to previous times. So I can take a look at some of these, I can add in this event time. Let's say I can start or mention that this event occurred on the 28th of October. And let's just keep the time at 9. And the end time of this event, you can technically have an event that lasts up to 1 week in SIMS3. So I'm going to say that the event ended on the 29th of October. So 1 day. And we enter our description here. So loud odor, or not odor, I apologize. Pungent odor noticed outside of home. And they mentioned that it was incredibly intense. So we're going to set an intensity of 6. And this is the justification I was referring to. I can choose to either automatically justify or manually justify. If I'm receiving a whole bunch of complaints in a specific region and I don't have any type of emission sources entered, then I would manually put a manual justification at the moment, because it won't be able to justify if it hasn't been able to record any data from an emission source. So at the moment, I'm going to put automatic justification because we are near a plume, and I am going to save it. So the way events work, it takes up to about 10 minutes, as Kyle mentioned earlier, for the system to catch up to it and perform those calculations every 10 minutes or so. I apologize. So what's going to end up happening is it's going to take a look at this event, take a look at the nearby emission sources, and determine whether or not there was a correlation. If there was no correlation, then what's going to end up happening is it's going to determine the event was not justified, it is not connected to that emission source. And that would tell me that perhaps I need to take a look at this event and take a look at the surrounding areas. There might be another emission source that I'm not tracking, or another emission source that I do need to do some research on to determine and figure out. So as you receive events, either automatically, as I mentioned, through the external API, or through other means, and you keep them entered in SIMS3, it'll eventually build a story for you as to how your events are operating with your emission sources, and how to investigate those events and look further into your community's issues. So with that note, the other method I can use to add an event is if I click on this E up here, new event, and let's say the event type. These are already pre-entered events. We're going to show you how to enter some more a little bit later on. But let's say there was a noise complaint received. I can create a noise complaint event. Click OK. Sorry, my apologies. So noise complaints. And we're going to tag it to our Scentroid office. We can pick whatever time. Loud noise heard at 6 p.m. And we're going to set an intensity of 4. So now that we created a new noise event, it's not going to necessarily have a GPS location assigned to it, but it is connected to our facility. We're going to take a look at how to look at those events and how to get some of that data shortly when we go into our event log. But typically, this is how we can add events from this screen itself. There's a third way that we can add events, but once again, that's also going to be in our event log. So yeah, that concludes our event section. So next, we're going to take a look at creating our sensitive receptors.
I will take over from there. All right. See, we're good to go. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at creating a new sensitive receptor. We got to pick a location first. Normally for a sensitive receptor, you would want some sort of, like Matthew mentioned earlier, something hard stuck that's always there. So like schools, maybe people's offices, or just generally people who maybe complain a lot or have a lot of issues. So you want to monitor their location. So for instance, here, we're gonna take a look at, maybe this area seems all right. There's a plaza here. So we'll go ahead and create a sensitive receptor in this area. Perhaps there's one of these little stores here are constantly sending us messages about our facility not doing too nice with the smell or something. So we're gonna make it over here. We're going to label it to our facility Scentroid office. As for a name, I don't know, we'll call it local store. Seems good enough. This is the more important part here is the select sources. So for here, these will be every one of your sources that you have in your facility. In this case, you want to pick the ones that you want to see the most. You can pick them all, or if you can just pick, you can also just pick one or two, or just if there's one in the area and one completely somewhere else. You don't need to always have the same thing there, especially if you know it's always going to read 0, it might not add value, but it's totally up to you. In this case, I'll pick pond and local chimney. Actually, I'll pick wastewater as well because we don't pick wastewater. We'll just pick these two since they're in the area and the local chimney is quite large in this case. So we're going to go ahead and click save, and you'll see our sensitive receptor shows up. Here with the sensitive receptor, because again, all the plumes are calculated kind of at the 10-minute mark of everything. In order to get the values for sensitive receptors, you may have to wait that 10 minutes again. But here at least you'll see it. You'll see there's a name, local chimney, name pond. These are just the names of the emission sources. And back. And then as an example of one that sort of has values reading, we go up here. We created this one a little bit before. We called this one Sarah's Tuna Farm because it's in like a little bit of a pond area. We tied it to the local chimney and the pond. And that's because you'll see that both the plumes are kind of affected in that general radius. And that's pretty much it for the sensitive receptors. Again, Matthew showed you the group before. Here you could just see all your sensitive receptors as well as your events that are correlated to them as well too in the same area.
Okay.
That's it there. I'll let Matthew talk a little bit more about our facilities and our groups and so on.
And Andrew, I just saw your question. If you give me 1 second, I will show you when we go over our facilities on what the data source for that we select from that list. So 1 second, just sharing. Okay, everyone, I'm going to show you very briefly then how to make a new facility. So let's just try to get out of this area. We have a lot of things happening there. So we now have a new facility that we want to create by Lakeshore. So let's grab an active area that we may potentially be monitoring. Okay, so let's take a look at what's happening over here. So let's right click and we're going to add a new facility here. So by right clicking and adding a new facility, we're given a couple of options. As you can see, the left menu has appeared here. So we're going to call this facility. It's clearly a park now that we're zoomed in, but just for example purposes, let's say that this is a wastewater treatment plant. The email that we would like to assign to the facility. So the lat and long have already been generated for that. We can fine tune these points if we would like to shift it a little bit, but for now, of course, I'm just going to leave it blank. Here's the important part. We have to enter some more of that geographical information. So we're going to attach the city to Toronto. Region, if applicable, of course, we're going to add Ontario and Canada. And here we can select our time zone. Time zones are very important for our facility just because all data that we look at, analytics and all other information is going to be based off of that time zone in particular. So make sure that you enter the correct time zone or the nearest possible time zone to that facility just to help you record that. So we do have, you can just start typing in the nearest city name. So I entered Toronto and it pulled it up automatically, which is GMT4. So we're going to create that facility. And a new facility has been added. Keep in mind this facility doesn't have any equipment in it yet. It doesn't have anything, not including an emissions or emission sources, of course. So if we click on that facility, it'll tell us no emission source or no devices. It gives you just a quick warning, just to give you a heads up. And if you zoom out, it auto-created your event group for you. So you can start logging events right off of creating the facility. And on that note, I will hand it back to Kyle.
Perfect. All right. So I should refresh so you can see Matthew's new facility. This one, right?
Yes.
All right. So what I'm going to do is we're going to sort of create some stuff in this facility using what we already have. So to start off, let's say we wanted to add an equipment. The first thing we need for an equipment is a group to put it in. So we're going to start with that. Quickly just go ahead and we'll right click the map again. Add new group is the new option. And here the info window pops up. We can give it a name. We're going to call it Cliff SL group, for example. Group type, there's a few different types. IAQ refers to the indoor air quality. SL, these are your CT airs, your SL50s, and so on. And sensitive receptors, if you want to make a sensitive receptor group. In this case, we're just going to stick with SL. Facility, this is part of our, this is the new one, right? Water treatment plant?
Wastewater treatment plant, yes.
Yes. Nobody's good stuff. We're going to tag it to this facility and we will go ahead and click create group and you'll see our group shows up. There's obviously nothing in it, but we have the icon on the map. So let's say we have just made this new facility and we want to bring one of our CTRs over to this facility from our previous one because we don't need it at the other one, for example, or it's just extra remaining and so on. Click Scentroid Farms, that's not the right one.
A little bit further north.
A little bit more north. We're all the way up here. Perfect. So what we're going to do is move an equipment from one group. Oh, also you'll see that mission source we created earlier now has a plume. So there you go. So add that in there. So we're going to go ahead and move. Maybe we'll move this CTR field over to somewhere else. So you'll see some of the options we have these little 3 buttons in the top right on pictures. If we click that, it will open up an editing menu. The main thing here that you can change, if you want, you can change the name. You can adjust the lat and long. Just note that if the equipment is actively sending data, it always uses the lat and long from the sampled string in order to update its location automatically. So changing the lat and long on equipment is dependent on if you actually move the equipment as well too. If it's not sending data, you can change it and we'll just change the location on the map as well. In this case, there's 2 other options for facility and group, and we want to actually move this equipment. So we're going to move it to the wastewater treatment plant, and we're going to move it to the Cliff SL group. And we'll click edit and confirm. You'll see that in our Scentroid office group, the equipment is gone. We no longer have it. We will close and we will use the search bar to go to wastewater. So wastewater treatment plant. I'll head down here. You'll see the Cliffside SL. We now have 1 active unit, and there's our CTR. The actual pin on the map won't move just because it's sending data actively. So it's going to use the lat and long from the sample source. So in this case, it will still bring us back here, but you'll see they have what's it called? It's in the new facility. So if you were to physically move the equipment down to where you want it, you'll see it update. And I believe that is it for that section. Well, what's left is
our timeline navigation.
The fun part. So I will hand it off to Matthew to talk about probably one of our coolest features, which is our timeline navigation.
I am very excited to talk about this with you guys. I'm sure you've seen it in all of our advertisements and all of our information. But our timeline navigation is probably one of the most amazing things that you can do in our SIMS3 map. So I'm just going to zoom out. Let's go back to our original facility. Oh, I picked Scentroid Farm again myself. A little bit further north, I'm sorry. Okay, so now that we've got our map open up, let's take a look at this and see what we can do here. If we go to this upper right panel over here, we've got a little hamburger menu icon up here. Let's click on it. And now we've got some general information about what's happening in this area. So you can't really see outside, but if you look out to our window, it is currently raining, as you can see in our weather panel too. It is picking up local weather data just to help us with some of these calculations. And what we're looking at now, just for our timeline navigation, we've selected our facility, which is our Scentroid office. And now we want to select some of our emission sources. Which was the newest one that you just added?
Wastewater.
Wastewater? Okay, so I'm just going to do local chimney and pond. And now what I want to do is let's say if I'm investigating these plumes, I want to take a look at what was happening on October 28th, for instance. 28th. I'm going to look at October 28th and determine what's going on with our devices along with our plumes. So I may have received an odor complaint on the 28th, or I may want to look back at an odor complaint that we received on the 28th just to see what was happening then. So let's enter our start date, October 28th we'll leave the time for 9 a.m. It's a good time to start. And let's go back to October 28th and let's set our end time for PM, 11 p.m. 28, 11 p.m. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click search. It's going to take a moment to load just because it has to take a look at some of our past data. It's got to draw some of these things on the map as well. So just give it a moment or two. You'll see the spinning wheel just to indicate that something is loading. So you don't need to click again. You click once and let it load. So we're just going to give that a second. And there we go. So as you guys can see, the plume was wildly different at this earlier time. So I'm going to zoom out just before we start to play with our timeline. And now I'm going to click on play. So if you look at this timeline navigation panel, just to go over what these buttons do, this shifts to the beginning of the time frame that you selected. This button over here shifts to the end of the time frame that you selected. This is to take one step back, and this is to take one step forward. So I'm going to click play. Let's see what happens to our plumes. What you're witnessing right now is the plume moving based off of current map locations, based off of our sensor data, and it is currently calculating and moving this plume through time. So let's just pause it. What time did we stop on? If we take a look at the upper right corner of the screen, it is currently saying October 28th at 1850 EDT. Now let's say I want to take a look at some of our devices during this time. I want to take a look at what was happening to some of our devices. So I'm going to click on our our air quality monitoring devices, and let's click on what is this guy? This is one of our Sentinels. What you're seeing here is Sentinel information for that specific time in particular. You could also, of course, go into analysis mode to take a deeper dive into what this means, but this is just looking at it at a glance. So we can see all the sensor information and the AQI data for that sensor in particular during that time. So now, just another way that we can take a look at this, or how we can use timeline to help us out with our maps, I'm going to click on our event group. Let's try to find something that was. Do you have any red notes in your file here?
Maybe you might just want to restart it.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, no.
So this plume, as you can see, it is red, or sorry, not plume, I apologize. It's event, it's marked and tagged as red. So this implies that when this plume was recorded, or the time that it was registered for, that there was an active emission source affecting it. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to click on focus time frame. And what this is going to do, it's going to take a moment to load again, and it's going to move time to see what was happening when this event was recorded, or when this event was live. So give it a second to load. Once again, you see the spinning wheel just to indicate, along with this little moving chart over here under timeline navigation. And there we go. So as you can see, there was a very active plume on top of it, heading towards the northeast. So even though the map was empty when I was looking at that odor event, the fact that it was red indicated that when it was live, there was something obviously affecting it. If there was nothing affecting it, then that would indicate to me that I may need to do a little bit more research in that area to determine what sources are affecting it. Maybe there's an unknown source or something that needs investigation. So of course I would put a perimeter of devices that I can use to analyze the area just to see what's happening, where the source may be moving from, and how we can potentially mediate the situation or tag the source and create the source within SIMS3. So yeah, I do believe that's everything that we want to cover for the map portion. Within the next part of our meeting, we're going to be taking a look at some of the other modules in here, including analytics, the event log, and our settings, of course, too, and our weather forecasting. So on that note, I think we're about hitting the 45-minute mark. So we're going to just take a quick 5-minute break. I definitely need to get a little bit of water from talking too much. I apologize. So we'll be right back with you guys. Okay.
We're going to jump back into it. Luke, I did see you had a question briefly about the colors line with AQI thresholds for the plumes. I'm going to show you something quickly that you can do for the plumes. We are working on trying to line up the plume with AQI thresholds, but just as a temporary measure, we've added in this little option here. So in the timeline navigation, there's the 3 dots. Here you can set basically a max intensity for the plume itself. So in this case, if we wanted to set something like 200, it will just adjust it based off of that. So you can kind of configure your concentration limit and so on just based off that button. But we are working on a way to better, I guess, make the plumes more reliant on the AQI thresholds and so on. So yeah, that's one thing I want to mention. And other than that, I'm going to kick us off with the analytics page. So as many of you guys may have seen already, there's a couple ways you can get into the analysis page. One is through the why do those plumes go in different directions? The plumes are mainly based off of wind direction. So in this case, it's probably a little bit weird just because this is a rectangular plume. So the wind might be a little bit different, or it's using the equipment data in the area, which is also just generated data. So it might be moving in a different direction in this case, just because of that. So that's that part there. Sorry, I disrupted the thing there. I'm going to continue on anyways. Sorry. So let's say we want to get some analytical data on one of our equipment. In this case, we're going to select the CTA emission source. Again, there's 2 ways we can go to the analysis page. One is through this menu here, which Matthew will show you later. I'm going to show you the little bit quicker way. So if we just click the equipment, there's 3 dots right above the sample thing. We can click that and it will bring us right to the analysis page. And as soon as you load, you are presented with a lot of data all at once here. So by default, when you click that button, it will show you the last 24 hours of the equipment. So that's why there's so much data this equipment is sending every minute. So it might look like a lot, but we can do things to make this look a little bit nicer, basically. So I'm going to start us off actually by just quickly adjusting the time range, which you can do just by clicking the little calendar icon. You can go here and let's take it from the 27th. This time seems good. Anytime you make a change, it's going to present you with this menu to select analysis type. This is just your confirmation thing. So we're going to stick with temporal analysis. The graph will load and we're presented with this. So the data looks a lot cleaner now. It's using average data because it's over a longer period and so on. So that's the time. That's how you can change the timeline. Here you can change the sensors you have selected. Matthew will show you some cool stuff you can do with that in a bit. I'm just going to go over a little bit more on this page. At the bottom here, you'll see this long sort of chart. This is all your events that took place during that time for this equipment that are related to this equipment, I should say. Mainly they're just generalized events, in this case, a lot of odor, and you'll see our 1 noise complaint event. So what we can do is kind of use this information to figure out more information on events or just look at the sensor data. So let's say this EV2, so event 2, we want to know more about it. We can hover over the graph and zoom in, and it will zoom in over the period. You'll see EV2, which if we scroll down is an odor event. Someone said there is a pungent odor notice outside of home. We can look at the data here and sort of see if it makes sense as to why there would have been odor. In this case, the data looks pretty normal compared to the rest of the timeline, so we can't say too much about it.
I do want to stress one thing so you guys are aware as well too. The information that we have on these devices, it has been generated by us just because we currently aren't running with a live device at this location at this time. So just for presentation purposes, we put together some auto-generated data. And just to touch back on that plume that you asked about earlier, Andrew, that's probably why you see it shifting in an odd direction as well, just because the data that we're using right now has been kind of automatically generated from us. But obviously, once you have your equipment running, you shouldn't really be seeing anomalies like that. And when you look at these charts, you'll definitely see those spikes and jumps to associate them a little bit better with the events. I'm sorry.
No problem, that was good to clarify. And briefly on the top here, there's also all your sensors. Right-clicking gives you some information about the sensors, so where it comes from and so on. There's some unit stuff you can do as well. If you just click on the sensor itself, you can hide it and you can show it and so on. I think that's pretty much the generalization of this analysis page. Also to mention as well, if there's a little home button here, this will return you back to the original view for the timeline you had. You can also unselect events if there's a lot in one area that you don't like, for example, you just want to focus on one. You can do that, for instance, to help you sort of see the data a little bit better. And I believe that's it for the analysis page, unless there's anything else to add.
We're going to be taking a look, I think, at the different analysis modes.
Yes,
so we'll take a look
yeah,
at
Matt is going to jump into some of the different analysis modes we have as well. Actually, I'm going to put you off 1 second. I see Luke has a question on how it's averaged. Right now, we're just calculating it just based off the length of data. We have different intervals. However, soon we're going to have some options so you can change the average that you'll see on the graph depending on the range you selected. We are working on that one. So.
All right. So I'm going to resume sharing my screen. We're going to be back on map view. So let's go back into our analysis module. And I'm going to be clicking on the left panel this time to go to our analysis page. So just click analysis there, and you're presented with this somewhat empty screen over here. But all of our options, the bread and butter, is located on this upper right corner of the screen. So what I'm going to do is I want to select a couple of sensors that I want to take a look in our analysis mode. So let's pick our Scentroid Office, SL group. And now let's take a look at the SL50s on site. So now we've got a couple of sensors to choose from. So keep in mind, this is automatically generated data as well. So I'm just going to click a bunch of these. I'm going to confirm the selection. Now for date, the 27th to the 31st should be good. Okay, so let's pick October 27th. And we're going to go to.
You can do it till today too.
Okay, let's go till today, the 31st. And we are going to take a look at our statistical analysis. So we saw our temporal analysis. That's what Kyle was going over. So let's take a look at statistical analysis now. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Okay, so now that our statistical analysis tool has opened up, just very briefly, what you're looking at the moment, you want to use this statistical analysis to isolate and determine individual sensor reading trends with our detailed tool here. So data is presented as percentages versus concentration for quick reference. This data trend guide that you can see on this on the bottom over here, it displays whether your tracked chemical readings are displaying an increase or a decrease. So as you can see, the current sensor data that we're looking at for the P barometer is no significant trend. So this is automatically generated data, so you can see it's going up and down, up and down, up and down. But in a real life scenario, you'll notice that it may be increasing over time or decreasing over time. This data trend, the point of this is to catch those trends and to give you a quick overview as to what's happening as you look over it. So one cool thing that you can do here, if you hover over these sensors on the top here, it gives you some brief information on each of the sensors. So you know what device you selected it from. I only am showing you data from one Sentinel device, but if I want to select information from multiple Sentinels, let's say if I want to compare the same sensor on 5 different Sentinel devices, I could load those all up in the settings as well. So as you click through, you can see how the chart changes depending on the sensor that you've clicked on. This only shows you one sensor at a time, mind you. But as you can see here, yeah, this is all automatically generated data, so it's all typically showing no significant trends or no significant increases or decreases.
If you do an AQ save, select like all the sensors from an AQ save. Some of them
Sure.
have a little bit different options or different statistics. At least when I.
All right, so let's take a look at some of our AQ save device instead. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click our Scentroid Office and Scentroid Office AQ save. Actually, first I'm going to click clear selection so that way I clear out my currently selected sensors. And now let's do our AQ save conference room. Let's select 1, 2, 3 sensors from here. And let's say if I wanted to compare it to AQ safe R&D area. So let's click on that. And let's click on the top three here too. And last but not least, the AccuSafe calibration map. I wanted to take a look at the PM readings from these sensors or from this device. So I'm going to click on those three sensors here. You can select up to 14 sensors for this. So keep that in mind. Whenever you do your comparisons, you can select 14 to display elements. So we're going to confirm the selection. Same date, right? October 27, perfect. And we're going to take a look at statistical analysis again. So it's just going to reload everything that we've selected. Perfect. All right, there we go. So now you can see that the PM sensor is showing a significant decrease over time. And if you hover over any of these elements too, it gives you a snapshot as to what you're looking at for that particular concentration. Then, all right, so you can see there as I hover over, it gives you that information. So now let's see if I want to take the exact same sensors that I selected into a different analysis mode. Now I want to take a look at AQI analysis, for instance. So let's click over here, and I'm going to select AQI analysis mode. So just give it a second to load.
Yeah, ones usually have more range on.
Okay. So keep in mind, because it is automatically generated data, the lines are kind of flat. But this PM sensor, when we put this information in, we have a little bit more variation on it. So what I'm looking at right now is our AQI analysis page. So this is based and established on AQI thresholds. And what this means is that these thresholds are either automatically generated, so out of the box threshold settings that we may have for each of our sensors, or they're user defined. So as we go into our settings module a little bit later, you'll see how you can change these thresholds and take a look at how those thresholds may be affecting your sensors. Keep in mind, modifying your AQI thresholds will not change any historical data. Modifying your AQI thresholds would only change data from that point moving forward. So every time you take a look at this module, you'll be seeing AQI sensors for the exact same types of information for this point in time. So this will never change, even if you do adjust your thresholds. So with that, we can take a look at any recorded AQI for any period of time. This module also allows you to view how many times the AQI may have exceeded these thresholds and for how long. So as we hover over these, it can give you a sense of our averages for these periods of time. So let's hover. And there you go. So that pretty much covers what we take a look, what our AQI, our analysis pages. So I'm going to hand it back to Kyle, where we can see how our event log plays a little bit more of a role in what we do day to day in SIMS3.
Okay. All right. So we just did analysis. Now we're going to go to the button that's right under analysis. So the little bell icon is the notifications page. And if you click that, we're just going to be presented with kind of similarly the same screen as the analysis page. In the top right, you'll have all your options. So in this case, we have our entities. Here you can select multiple facilities, or you can go all the way down to a sensor level in terms of what notifications you want to see. So I can answer Luke's question right now. Luke, right now, the question was the limits for the analysis page. Right now, we have it pretty much up to a year. Yeah, I think it's up to a year so far. So it's much more expanded compared to SIMS2 in terms of what you can see over the time period. Anyways, I'm going to continue on. Sorry.
Historically, you can go further back. You're just
maximum. Yeah, it's a lot of the maximum year, but you can go as far back as your equipment has data for. I'm going to continue on. Sorry. So in this case, let's select all of our notifications for the Scentroid office. When you do click it, it does open up the little menu. You can see more. You'll see we have a notification from the sensitive receptors. We have and 7 notifications from the odor group. But we're going to ignore that, and we're just going to select Scentroid office and confirm. There's 2 options here. You can either select the time range if you want to see specific events during a time, or you can click the all time button, which will just pull the events from the whole period, which is what I'm going to click. And then here, our event view, we're just going to go to our event summary. And here is our event notification page. It looks a little tight on my screen. I just have a weird resolution on my laptop. I apologize, but everything is still displayed nicely. So that's the main part. In the top left here, you'll see we have a little pie chart. This is just a breakdown of your different event categories and how many events took place. So in this case, we have an odor event and we have a couple noise complaints, and you'll see them here. This represents our new events, so anything that's not red. We also have a category called hidden events, which hidden events main thing is they won't show up on this graph here. They're hidden from the whole website. Essentially, you can kind of hide an event if you don't want it to be shown. We also have the red events, which just means the event was marked red. So we have 6 red events. And on the chart itself, we have a couple options. So each one of these columns that have the 3 dots, they can be filtered by. So if we just only want to see new events, we can filter by that. We can filter by the types, we can filter by the justification. If there's admin notes, we'll see them here. We can filter by occurrences, intensity. And the last column is this mark column. This one has a couple options for select all, or you can filter it. In this case, though, I just want to show a couple other things we can do. Oh, sorry, one more button I forgot. There's also this button above the mark here. This represents pretty much all your options that you can do. So there's mark as red, mark as unread. We can hide an event. We can show all of our hidden events. We can view, edit, or delete events, and we can create new events as well too. In this case, what I'm going to start off with is just marking an event as red. Just for fun, we'll actually mark a couple. I'll mark these 3 here, all as red. So we'll select them. We'll select them, and we will click mark as red. And we'll go down to the bottom part here. And then let's say we want to hide an event, for instance. Let's say this guy, this reported alcoholic smell in the backyard. Maybe this guy just had a party in his backyard and there's a lot of alcohol, for example. You know, it wasn't related to us, but he thought it was us. And we don't want people to see that. We want to hide that because it's not relevant to us. So what we're going to do is mark it and then show hidden, and it's gone. You'll see the hidden counter went up, but the event is no longer on the graph. If we want to see all of our hidden events, there's an option here just to show hidden, and you'll see these are all of our hidden events that we have. That's the event that we just mentioned as well too, as that reported alcoholic smell, for instance. We can also go back. If we want to edit event, we can go ahead and again just select one, for instance. We can click the 2 dots. There's an edit event option, and here you'll see we can edit. That's a little tough to see because my scroll bar off my screen. There we go. And we can edit the event. We can change things if we need to change things as well too as an option. We can also add events. So we can add a new event, which this one opens up our event type. So if it's a non-GPS event, so it's a non-odor event, we can categorize it here. So if we wanted a tank maintenance or a noise complaint, we can add it here. And there's also an option to delete events as well. All of which take place on whatever events you have marked. If you're going to edit event, you can only mark one, obviously, and so on. And that's pretty much it for the event notification page. Hopefully this kind of helps you guys track all your events and get a better idea of what's going on at the current time. And I guess I'll hand it over to Matthew unless there's anything to add, and he'll talk about the forecasting page.
All right. So keep in mind, you're probably going to be spending a lot of time in that event log page. It's just pretty much where everything goes, all the major events, everything that's been recorded in our SIMS3 system will appear there. There are ways to add new event types. We're going to be looking at that when you go into our settings. So this is a good way to keep those events organized, or whatever kind of circumstance you want to monitor, as I said earlier. Let's say if you want to check for headaches at a certain time of the facility, tank maintenance, even calibration events, every event that we create in our system will be found in that log. So on that note, let's take a look at our forecasting page. So we're going to share the screen. Let's click on this button on the left over here, this little forecast module. Give it a second to load. There we go. So now what I want to do is I want to select one of our facilities. So let's click on this little hamburger icon in the upper right corner, and let's take a look at our Scentroid office. So what you see right now is a forecast for the following couple of days. So we can take a look at wind, we can take a look at temperature, we can take a look at weather conditions, and we can see all of the data for this particular time. One thing that I didn't really mention yet with our timeline navigation is the ability for SIMS to look into the future. So we can look up to 48 hours in the future Mind you, we have data for the next 14 days, but if we want to take a look at plumes and how plumes may develop over time, we can take a look at a specific time frame within 48 hours. So I want to say, let's say I want to take a look at what's happening with our plumes tomorrow. So let's click on this hourly forecast button. And now let's see what's happening to our plume at 2 in the morning. For some reason, we get a lot of complaints at 2 in the morning. So just give it, not that many now. So let's take a moment, let this load, 1 second. So as you can see on the upper right corner of the screen, the date and time that we're looking at is November 1st at 2 a.m. EDT. So the time, this is the time that I mentioned earlier, the time that you registered with the facility, or the time zone that you've added for the facility. So it just keeps your time consistent in anything you do regarding the facility itself. We can zoom out, take a look at those plumes. And yeah, so this is what we're going to be looking at for 1 a.m. during that time. This is great if you have, if you wanted to determine complaint risks. This is kind of something that we're working on as well. We're helping to determine complaint risks for you. But in the meantime, until we get that module up and running, shouldn't be too much longer now. You can take a look at the plume, how the plume is currently interacting with the map, and you can determine complaint risks automatically. So I can tell you at 1 a.m., there's a very, very high probability of receiving complaints within this plume zone here. All right, so that's pretty much how our weather forecasting module works, how we can take a look into the future. I only showed you one time in particular, but of course we can click on this little play button.
I think just one time.
It was just,
You can change the timeline though, to
Yeah.
go into the future if you want to generate a range of plumes.
yeah,
And any sort of future plume is always represented by a red dot on the timeline navigation. It's just
yeah. But this, what it does, it takes a look at how the plume would evolve for that hour, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
oh yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So automatically you're just looking at what's happening to that plume in the immediate time. And you can of course expand the time range if you wanted to see beyond that, or you can go through the forecast module itself again. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the forecasting mode. And now we have our robust user settings.
Let's jump into it. Okay. So the last option we have right now is for the settings page, which we will navigate there. And similar to everything before, you got this screen here, and the top right is all your options. So we have different tabs for different settings. We're going to start off with the work group settings, which mainly consists of your user settings, company information, and your roles. So here we have this, we have our users set up here. We have us, who is currently logged in as the admin. We have two other accounts. We have Mary and we have Joe. Mary is a manager and Joe is a user. And what these options next to it for access restrictions, they represent what they can see within SIMS3. So Mary, for instance, she's a manager, but she can only see whatever's inside of our Scentroid Farms facilities. Joe, for instance, though, however, he's a user and we've limited him to only Scentroid Office and only our SL group. So he'll see whatever is inside of our SL. You can also limit by equipment as well, so they only see one particular type of equipment. That is also an option. There's also buttons here to filter by your facility, and you can add a new user using this as well. In the second tab, we have company info. If you have the roles to allow you to change this, you are able to change your company name, your address, or your telephone as well too. This section is probably one of the more important ones. This is alarm emails. Here, anybody in your company who wants to receive alarms about your equipment itself, so things that diagnosis reports from the that come directly from the equipment, put your email in here, so that way it sends the notification to you directly. You can use any email you want for this as well. It doesn't have to be predefined. You can just free type it out. If I want to do test@cent.com, then I could do that, and I would just follow up by hitting the save button. Next are all the roles that we have available as well. So by default, you're given 4 different roles. You have an admin, you have a manager, you have a guest, and you have a user. Everything is defined in this list. You can obviously see everything for these ones. These 4 are preset, but we also have this add role button here, which you can make your own role and you can give it whatever permissions you want. For instance, so I created this one called Scentroid student. So if we had a co-op student or something and we didn't want them to see everything we had, maybe in this case, we just want to let them view our facility groups, equipments, and sensors and check out our analysis page and includes, and that's it. So we can edit roles here and create roles as well, and we can define them and give them to a user within the user list options. And I'll hand it over to Matthew, who will talk about our event settings, which we've mentioned a few times already, so it'd be good to get over to that point.
Okay. So you think I'd get faster at sharing the screen by this point? Okay, so let's take a look at our event settings. Let's click on our settings page and click on event settings on the upper right corner here. So over here, what you're seeing is a quick list of all registered events within registered event types, within SIMS3. So these top 3 event types, these are system events. This implies that these cannot be changed. We can't do editing and we cannot delete these events. These are core event types in our system that operate a lot of features. So that's kind of why these are locked out to you. This also includes alarms. Everything is within these types of events. Odor, of course, is its own system. It's its own type of event. So that is a main event type. These down here, these are our user-defined events. So we have right now noise complaints and we have tank maintenance. So let's say if you want to flush your tanks in a wastewater facility, there's a high chance that you may even get a correlated odor event when you do things like this. It's just a really smart way of tracking your events and keeping your event logs nice and clean. So now let's add in a new event category. Let's say, type of events we have there. Let's say that fatigue. People feel fatigue within the office, within an office environment. So let's add in a quick description, feeling tired in office setting. So this little tool down here, this is great if you want to affiliate that event type with a specific component within your facility or within a separate facility that you may be tracking and monitoring. But for now, I'm going to pick all, so that way this event type is now system-wide. So fatigue is now registered to all. And now when we go into our maps, whenever we want to report an event, we'll have that option for fatigue in our pull down. So we can start tracking people feeling tired within the office. And we can then go to our analysis page and take a look at those fatigue, the fatigue events that we have registered. And we can take a look at chemical readings during that time. So I'm sure you guys remember when you take a look at our analytics, that we have the event overlaid on top of the chart. So it's a great way for you to see any type of correlation right off the bat. So yeah, this concludes our event settings. Now we're going to go over AQI. Sure. Okay. So just while we're on, while I have this page open, let's take a look at our AQI threshold settings. So our AQI thresholds, these are what I was referring to earlier for AQI analysis, and also on the main map, when you clicked on the device, that little half pie chart that you saw next to each of the sensor readings. These are our AQI thresholds. Out of the box, we do have some settings for the AQI thresholds for either a good, moderate, sensitive, unhealthy, very unhealthy, or hazardous readings. So we are given the opportunity in SIMS3 to manually adjust these ourselves. So let's say if I want to take a look at it, I can filter our equipment down. So I can just take a look at specific pieces of or specific device types. I can even filter down the sensor types. So I can take a look at P barometer for all devices. Let's just get that going. And now what happened is our list has been compressed to just show the P barometer for these devices itself. So now let's say I want to modify our AQI thresholds for these devices. Let's click on this little edit button here. What we can see here when we click edit is the equipment name, the sensor name, and we can also see the individual thresholds, the maximum thresholds for each of those devices. So let's say if I want to set the maximum threshold for good at 100, I can change the moderate to 200, the sensitive to 350, maybe unhealthy is only 400, very unhealthy is 450, and hazardous would be 550. So we can click save. And now that we have saved, every single time that we take a look at that device now in analysis, you'll see it reflecting the new values that you've got entered. And also on the map as well, of course, when we're looking at individual devices. All right, so I'm going to hand it back to Kyle. He's going to take a look at the last components within our settings module, and that should be it for today. Go for it.
All right. So our second last component we're going to go over is the alarm triggers. So, or alarm rules, for instance. So this was something that we had in Sims 2 that you could create, and we've also added in Sims 3. And we hope that we made it a bit more easier to add as well. That was our goal for this one at least. So basically the way they work is we can create a rule for a specific sensor, and which we give it a condition. So for example, some of these ones are saying for PM10, anything that's over greater than 90, this trigger represents how the alarm will trigger. Because of things like outliers, it's not always great to say 1 of 1. So this instance, we're saying for every 2 out of 10 samples, we are going to trigger the alarm. Frequency is how often it checks for this alarm, and the user list is just who received this email. So let's go ahead and we'll add a new one. So this is a little bit different than how Sims 2 added it. We have 2 tags to start off with. So we have factor and we have this tag. Factor, when we click on it, will open up 4 different menus. We can either choose all, facility, group, or equipment. The whole concept behind this is to allow you to bulk insert alarm rules. So for instance, I'll do facility just as this example. And the tag lets us select which facility. If you do equipment, it will let you select which equipment. If you do group, it will let you select which group, and so on. And what this will do is I will select the Scentroid office for this example. And I will confirm my selection. So what this will do is we'll pull up every sensor type that's within our Scentroid office. And what we want to do is, let's say we want to create a rule for PM1. When we add this rule, it will take every sensor that is PM1 within our office and generate this rule for it all at once. So they'll all have the same rule. As you'll see here, like for example, these are all PM10s, all from the Scentroid office facility. For trigger, we can do 5 out of 15, for example. And let's say we want to check this one every 12 hours. And user email list, this will just give you the option to select which users you would like to receive the notification for this alarm rule being broken. You can obviously select just yourself. You can select more, you can select less, it's totally up to you. And then we'll go ahead and click say, oh, I gotta fill out the field. Less than 60, 60, good. And we'll hit save. And you'll see here that it was added in our PM1, there it is. All of them are added down here with Eric 2 as well. If for whatever reason, you may want to change this to this specific sensor by clicking edit, you can change just the specific sensor threshold. So if this one maybe needed a slightly less range or something, you can do that as well too and fine tune it, so on. It wouldn't change the rest, just that one rule. But the idea of the bulk insert is to get it all done at once, and then you can fine tune if you need to later on. And the last section I'm going to talk about is the calibration. I'm going to start off with the calibration, mainly just as a quick warning, is there are some options in calibration that can affect your equipment. If you're unsure of things, please just contact us at Scentroid support, and we can help you better define your new calibration settings and so on. I'm just going to show you how the page works, and I'll give you some more warnings along the way because it is kind of important. So the first thing we can do is we can see our calibration. There's 2 tables, both of which are empty at the start. This one just represents the sensors and an equipment. You'd have to select the equipment, which I'll show you in a sec, and it will fill out this table. And there's also the calibration records, which will fill out when you select the sensor. It will show you all the records that was the records for that sensor's calibration. So in this case, we're going to select Scentroid Office, our SL group, and we will select CT air emission source, and we will load it. And you'll see here we have a calibration record. It gives us the last date, and it was for H2S. So we can click on that to see we have 3 records, and they're all defined here, and the dates of the calibration. If we wanted to add a new record, we can click that. This will pre-fill for you. You just need to verify the sensor, so we can do hydrogen sulfide again. Calibration type, this is the most important. This is going along with the warning I mentioned. Manual just refers to someone physically changing the calibration on the device itself, whether it be in the software of the device or some sort of fine tune on the sensor itself. This would just basically create a log of the calibration. Automatic will physically change the, well, not physically, it will change the numbers on the equipment that are received from our cloud server so that the data would be changed different depending on this. So just if you're unsure, don't click automatic, verify it with us as the support team, and they can help you out with the calibration stuff if it needs to be calibrated. Otherwise, manual will just create a log, which is what we're going to collect in this case. Here you can change the sensitivities, we can change the offset, and we can click add, and we just click the sensor again, and it will add that record. At the bottom here, there's a little chart. It's basically just like a calibration over time, so you can check out your calibration records over a time period. And I believe that is it for the calibration page. We'll stop sharing. Quick question for the DR2000, we're able to work through calibration on SIMS. Not at the moment. DRIMS and SIMS are still separated. We do have some plans in the future to change that though.
We're going to be looking at putting in all of our mobile devices within SIMS3. So this is our urban scanner and our DR units, of course. And we're actually very excited to announce that shortly. So hang tight, and and we'll talk about that when the time comes. So I did notice that Dee and Iris have been fielding pretty much all the questions that we've had in chat. If there's any outstanding questions, please ask them now. Or what we can do is we can answer them separately, either in one-on-one sessions, or we can go into a little bit more details. I think it's very important to stress that we've done a lot of testing in SIMS3. We've played with the system, and we want to make sure that it was perfect for you and your individual uses. So with that in mind, we do want to hear your feedback. I think it's very important that you guys communicate to us what your experiences are in SIMS3, things that you would like to see in the future, maybe even a simple quality of life change. We're open to your suggestions, and we do feel that we can create an incredibly powerful piece of equipment for you that works for your facility and for your own personal needs. It is highly customizable at the moment, and of course there are so many options, so many things that you can do in it, and we're excited for you to start experiencing some of those options and to essentially dive right in and to figure out what SIMS3 can do for you. So do you want to, there were some questions about data exporting?
Yes, I'll quickly answer the SIMS3 reports and export. We're releasing a feature very soon for SIMS3 to automatically generate reports. Maybe you've seen in the tutorial section. We had to put a little bit of hold because we want to do some more testing, but we're really close to wrapping that up, and it should come out pretty soon. Basically, that will let you just automatically generate reports given on a basis, and it will create a PDF and send it to you directly, or you can download it through the website as well. And also the exporting of data will be moved to that area. For now, it is a button just on the analysis page. Let me just open it up.
Share your screen.
Oh yeah, I gotta share my screen. Let's go over that quickly. Just open this one here, go to analysis. Yeah, right now it will just export using this button here, and you can select, it will export whatever the time range is and give you the raw data for it. But we are working on moving that to the reporting area, which you can consistently have that same export, so you don't need to keep re-downloading it every time on the top right or setting the time range. You just have a stored data of it, and you can pull that file whenever you need it. And also the reports will be added as well. That's one of the things. Go into the questions.
I'll quickly take this. The exporting, we're looking at doing exports. You can look at them weekly. We have daily as well.
For reports, yeah.
Daily,
raw
weekly.
data, we can go up to a year so far. Just be in mind, the more data you select, the slower it might take. But yeah, we don't have limits like SIMS2 does. So just bear in mind the time. For now, if anything goes wrong with your export, just let us know at Scentroid support, and we can try to recover it. Sometimes issues happen, especially when you do larger time ranges. Just again, contact us and we will help you out to the best of our ability. There's some other questions. For the case of pipelines, how will SIMS3 be able to do the analysis? That one I'm not too sure on.
I think let's talk a little bit later, Harry's, if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Just to see what circumstance you're referring to. I want to take a look at what devices that you currently have operating, and of course, this could be something that we work together on.
Okay, go up. So when do you expect source estimation feature to be ready? We're still working on that one, so we don't really have a full timeline to give you, but once we get close to the feature being available, we will generate an announcement and let everybody know.
Yeah. Stay tuned to our Scentroid updates, of course, the email announcements. I will always notify you whenever we have a new module within SIMS3 working. It's a massive tool with tons and tons and tons of components, and there's still so much more that we think that we can add in, so many more exciting features and ways for you to get about your daily reporting supports. So just stick with us, and of course we'll keep that information feed going to you. Harry's SIMS3 is pure enviro as well. It now occupies that, as you can see with our plumes and how we record our weather data. There's no need for that now. Everything is now within SIMS3.
Well, we have our AQ safes for indoor. So if you have AQ safe equipment, it can monitor indoor, which monitors the air quality, obviously, and you can view everything on there within the AQ safe groups if you have them. And as for can rain, snow, and high temperatures influence analysis results, not for the equipment data itself. That's just the data that's sent directly from the equipment. It uses the calibration to calibrate the data, and then it's passed to us.
AQ safes follow the exact same process as our SL50s and our CTR devices. The only difference is AQ safes don't have a GPS within them themselves. Unless, of course, this is something that you work on, you customize with the Scentroid team. But typically speaking, AQ safes are all associated with a single GPS location. Hence, we don't show them individually on the map. But AQ safes still have the same data analytics as your other devices, and they still follow all the similar procedures. You can tag events to them as well. So nothing really changes. It's just a matter of how they're visually portrayed on the map.
Will SIMS2 be available until that time? Oh, okay. Otherwise, we will lose the back trajectory. I guess we can keep SIMS2 going. I don't see a thing. We'll talk to the team and we'll make a full announcement if we change anything.
Yes.
You can obviously view it on SIMS2, so we have that banner set up. If anything changes, just look there and we will do our best to see what we can do for that.
I think it's important, Luke, that we talk to you individually at some point after this meeting, just to get a sense of what you're currently operating with for SIMS2, what your current needs are. I want to make sure that we're fulfilling absolutely everything for you and helping you out in the best way possible for SIMS3 to be operating for you.
For the can we export data per hours, we will we'll do our best to ship that with the export/report page that's coming soon. So you can be able to export your data on different intervals. I believe right now you'll be able to export it by hour, 8-hour, 12-hour, and 24-hour intervals. So hopefully that helps out a bit there. And we'll try to ship it all together so we can get all the features out for that page as soon as possible.
All right. So guys, keep in mind that even though that you may not have questions right away, you might develop them a little bit later on. Our email is always open. I've been sending you a bunch of emails from matthew.c@scentroid.com. Feel free to send over any communication. I'll get whatever team members necessary involved to assist you in the best way possible. I think it's very important that I know your experiences with SIMS3, and I want to make sure that you guys are all very comfortable using this platform, talking to perhaps customers with it, or maybe you're using it yourself in your own facility. Let's make sure that you're happy with your experiences, and if not, we'll find a way to make sure that you're navigating appropriately within SIMS3 and finding all the proper solutions. All right. So I think that concludes our questions. I don't see any more coming in. Like I said, never hesitate to email us. And yeah, so I'd like to thank a couple of the behind the scenes people. Thank you, Emily. She's watching the screen right now, guys. We also have Iris and Dee, who've been fielding questions like complete pros in our chat. And yeah, so please don't hesitate to email us if you have any questions, comments, concerns. And we hope your Sims 3 experience is exciting as it has been for us. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.